Forget the vendor marketing. Today, we are conducting a clinical, boardroom-level dissection of enterprise technology failures and structural readiness. We are looking at the absolute, unfiltered reality of integrating artificial intelligence into your enterprise resource planning core. This explainer is not about the theoretical potential of algorithms. We are not here to marvel at what a large language model can generate in a sandbox environment. This is about operational physics, it is about organizational change, and it requires total hype defiance. We are going to break down why the most sophisticated technology on the market consistently fails when it meets the reality of human behavior and deeply entrenched corporate workflows.
80%. That is not an exaggeration. It is the severe reality of the current enterprise landscape. Nearly 80% of enterprise artificial intelligence initiatives never reach production scale. They die in the pilot phase. They get trapped in localized silos. And of the few that do actually manage to go live across an organization, fewer than half deliver any measurable financial returns within their first 3 years. The hard truth you need to accept is that the technology itself rarely fails. The code executes, the models compute. What fails are the people, the processes, and the underlying incentives that govern human behavior inside your firm. You are not facing a software problem right now. You are facing a massive organizational readiness deficit.
Consider where the smart money actually goes when deploying these systems. Tommaso Maria Ricci points out a definitive pattern that is heavily documented in global benchmarking studies. Artificial intelligence leaders, the ones actually seeing a return on capital, spend 70% of their investment on people, processes, and their operating model. Only 30% goes to algorithms and tooling. Now, look at the technology laggards. They entirely invert this ratio. They focus exclusively on buying the software, securing the licenses, and completely neglect the human blueprint required to operate it. The gap between industry leaders and laggards is no longer defined by access to superior technology. It is defined entirely by how well the organization is structurally prepared to absorb disruptive change. This leads us directly to the core thesis you must internalize before authorizing another technology spend. Process before platform. It is a non-negotiable sequence. If your underlying business workflows are fragmented, undocumented, or inefficient, deploying advanced artificial intelligence will not magically fix them. In fact, it makes things exponentially worse. Automating a broken workflow with advanced algorithms simply scales your inefficiencies across the enterprise at an unprecedented speed. Software cannot repair broken operations. You must fundamentally understand how work actually flows through your business, where the structural delays occur, and exactly where manual errors are introduced before you even think about layering autonomous agents over your existing technical debt. You have to understand that this technological shift creates profound psychological friction on the floor. Traditional enterprise resource planning systems are deterministic. They produce fixed, predictable outputs based on fixed inputs, and they automate highly structured, repetitive workflows. Employees trust them because they behave reliably. You put data in, you get a known result out. Agentic artificial intelligence systems, however, are probabilistic. They shift the locus of expertise away from the human operator, and they actively attempt to replicate human judgment. This creates a deeply irrational anxiety among your workforce. Your employees are transitioning from a system they trust implicitly to a system that demands constant oversight, hallucinates occasionally, and directly challenges their professional identity. To understand the massive stakes of ignoring this friction, we must examine historical precedent. Let us conduct a surgical operational postmortem of the infamous Hershey Foods Corporation systems failure. In 1996, an ambitious integration project was initiated with a highly recommended 48-month timeline, but executive leadership disastrously compressed this into 30 months. They did this to meet arbitrary deadlines and display a false sense of operational readiness to their shareholders. They forced a premature go-live in July of 1999. By October, hitting exactly during their peak Halloween season, the system completely collapsed. Orders could not be processed. Pallets sat in warehouses. The supply chain was entirely paralyzed, not because of a bad piece of code, but because of a failure in executive patience. The root causes of this implementation collapse were entirely avoidable. Both Hershey and subsequently Nike made specific, fatal operational compromises in the blind pursuit of speed. First, they bypassed conference room pilots. They completely skipped the crucial phase where departments validate that system configurations actually align with functional day-to-day needs. Second, they skipped systems integration testing, failing to assess how the new system handles cross-departmental workflows and complex edge case scenarios. Third, they eliminated user acceptance testing just to meet those arbitrary deployment dates, effectively launching without a dress rehearsal under realistic conditions. Furthermore, they misaligned their cutover scheduling, opting to go live right before peak demand periods. And finally, they executed incredibly poor data migration strategies, moving corrupted, dirty legacy data into a brand new architecture. These were not software glitches. They were absolute failures of executive discipline and governance. The direct financial impact of these governance failures was staggering. Hershey experienced a severe operational halt, resulting in $100 million of unprocessed orders, furious retail partners, and deeply impacted quarterly profits. Nike experienced an identical $100 million revenue loss due to rushed supply chain software implementations and a completely neglected change management strategy. This is the reality of technical debt. When you compromise on operational readiness and fail to prepare your workforce for a systemic shift, the financial markets punish you instantly and without mercy. To prevent that kind of collapse, there are 5 specific forces of change management you must master. First is the identity capital threat. Your senior knowledge workers derive their entire career value from their accumulated judgment. When an algorithm attempts to replicate that specific craft, it creates an existential threat to their identity, leading to immediate resistance. Second is the loss of professional autonomy. Tools that rigidly prescribe actions create severe algorithmic aversion. Third are latent fairness issues. If there are pre-existing organizational tensions regarding compensation or workload, a new software deployment will amplify them. Fourth is the reality of trust accrual. Trust in probabilistic systems must build slowly through hands-on experience. It absolutely cannot be installed via a mandatory corporate training module. Finally, incentive misalignment. If you measure your employees on legacy metrics while expecting them to use autonomous tools, they will actively resist the deployment to protect their existing scorecards and livelihoods. Consider this anonymized case study of a financial services firm with 2,800 employees. They deployed an AI pilot program that yielded a massive 40% productivity gain among a small, highly controlled group of advisors. The executives thought they had a massive win. However, upon full enterprise rollout, that massive gain collapsed to a mere 8%. The postmortem diagnostic revealed exactly why. The operating model remained entirely unchanged. Compliance teams still required manual review of every single generated document, totally negating any potential time savings the AI provided. Furthermore, the advisor's scorecards were completely misaligned with the new, faster workflow. The underlying technology was functionally flawless. It did exactly what it was programmed to do. But the organizational structure outright rejected it because the processes were strictly tethered to the past. To avoid this trap, you must execute a highly precise architectural shift. Moving from inefficient, reactive legacy environments to proactive decision-making frameworks requires exact integration points. As you can see mapped out here, you must connect your operational master data directly with your predictive analytics and automated workflows. If your advanced algorithm sits outside the system of record, as a disconnected chat-based interface, you are just creating another localized silo. The intelligence must be integrated natively into the execution layer of your architecture. It needs to live where the work is actually being done to have any systemic, measurable impact on the business. Before you execute that integration, you must secure baseline core integrity. We call this Phase A stability, and no deployment occurs until this is locked down. Look at these requirements. Ignore clean financial ledgers, and you risk severe algorithmic hallucinations based entirely on embedded legacy errors. Fail to validate your inventory counts, and you can expect catastrophic supply chain and fulfillment failures the moment the AI tries to automate ordering. Lacking documented data governance causes fragmented interpretation and massive data drift over time. And without strict role-based access control, you expose sensitive, personally identifiable information and invite severe internal security breaches. You simply cannot layer artificial intelligence over a fractured, unstable foundation. To secure this stable foundation, you are required to execute a mandatory 90-day diagnostic protocol. This functions as a clinical, unsparing assessment of your organizational capabilities before you commit massive capital to a multi-year technology roadmap. First, map the human geography. You must go beyond the org chart to understand who truly holds influence, who the natural early adopters are, and who will actively orchestrate political roadblocks. Next, stress test the operating model. Walk proposed use cases through your actual current decision flows to expose hidden gaps in accountability and bottlenecks. Finally, build the change roadmap. Assign specific, documented owners with real names and strict accountabilities. Companies that skip this critical diagnostic phase think they are saving 90 days on paper, but they ultimately lose 18 months in operational delays and rolled back deployments. Following that 90-day diagnostic, you enter a strict, chronological 12-month implementation architecture. Months 1 through 3 are dedicated entirely to the diagnostic and design phase we just covered. Do not rush it. Months 4 through 6 focus heavily on foundation building.
This is where you stand up your change management function, clean your data layers, and physically redesign the operating model to accept the new technology. Months 7 through 9 involve wave deployment. You roll out the tools exclusively to highly ready, culturally receptive business units to build early momentum and secure quick wins. Finally, months 10 through 12 are reserved for scaling and enterprise-wide institutionalization. This strict pacing matters deeply because skipping structural milestones guarantees a systemic failure down the line. This entire timeline requires measured, steady capital investments and uncompromising operational discipline.
During this 12-month timeline, you must deploy non-negotiable behavioral guardrails to successfully bypass deep organizational resistance. Top-down mandates do not work here. Instead, implement peer-to-peer buddy systems, pairing users together to bypass the identity threat associated with formal training modules. Institute monthly public failure rituals where your senior leaders openly discuss their own missteps with the new tools, proving to the floor that honest experimentation is culturally safe. You must conduct quarterly friction audits to actively source, identify, and fix user experience issues before they breed resentment. Enforce strict dead zone protection policies. This means officially shielding certain vulnerable departments from the immediate political pressure to deploy new AI tools, giving your firm the necessary breathing room to learn without enterprise-wide disruption. And deploy impact storytelling programs to highlight non-obvious operational wins and build sustained organic internal momentum. Furthermore, to accurately track this transformation, you must mandate the total replacement of superficial vanity metrics with rigorous boardroom-level impact indicators. Stop measuring adoption breadth. Knowing how many total employees simply logged into a platform once tells you absolutely nothing. Instead, you must measure adoption depth, which is the precise percentage of eligible workflows actually completed end-to-end using the autonomous tools. Track the precise time to first value for every single employee onboarding onto the system. Monitor the voluntary advocacy rate to gauge if the tool is achieving organic scale without managerial pressure. Assess your qualitative operating model fit score. Ultimately, the only metric that survives genuine executive scrutiny is net value realized. You must track the actual auditable dollar value of the benefits captured, minus the total implementation investment and ongoing operating costs.
We conclude this explainer with a fundamental provocative inquiry that every single executive must confront before signing off on an integration. Is your organization structurally capable of absorbing the immense change that autonomous artificial intelligence demands? Or are you simply scaling your existing technical debt at a faster, much more expensive rate? Vendor marketing will continuously promise you seamless transformation and instant returns. But the stark reality of enterprise execution requires deep structural discipline, rigorous pre-deployment testing, and an unyielding, continuous focus on the human blueprint. The technology is undeniably ready. The algorithms work. The critical question remains whether your enterprise is operationally prepared to govern them.